Hey, Julie, good to see you.
Yeah.
Um, you're this year. Thanks so much for joining us on Fuse Calls. You're this year's chair and curator, and I just want to jump in and let's get going on some of these questions. So I know you're working with us at Informa on multiple business events aside from Fuse. What is it that draws you to working in the business event space in the first place? And why specifically do you feel that Fuse is so important?
Well, to say it simply, to me, events are opportunities to convene really interesting people and have important conversations. I also find that a lot of great things happen at events. My entire career has been shaped by the events that I have participated in. I'm down here in DC right now. 20 years ago, I spoke at a Fast Company conference and bumped into the US Navy, and my life, was altered inextricably. But events to me are a really good way to have a balcony view of what's going on in the world in a particular discipline like design or strategy or um, uh, data analytics, and to convene with people, to be with people who care about the same thing.
So how exactly do you bump into the U.S. Navy? Just real quick.
Well, they were there.
They
They were
were.
there. Called me, what can I say? And one of the creative director that I was working with at the time, this great woman named Carrie, said to me, "There's this guy from the U.S. Navy who really wants to talk to you." I said, "Well, what does he do?" She said, "I don't know. He's in IT." And I thought, well, okay, I'll talk to him. Well, it was the deputy CIO of Naval Aviation, and he wanted
Wow.
to bring me and Tom Peters down to Pax River, and we have been working together off and on ever since. So conferences bring like-minded people together. They bring diverse people together, and they're just like a petri dish.
Very, very cool. You're would do you get offended if people call you a people person? Because if I think of a successful people person, what I know from you, I'm a people person myself, and a lot of times, I mean, that's kind of a corny
Well,
description,
I
but
don't no, I don't think it's corny at all. The way I think about it is I think I'm a tremendous appreciator of talent. In fact, Tom Peters used to use the phrase being a connoisseur of talent. And I am. I feel like I've got some pretty good X-ray vision that I can see people's talent very clearly and kind of where they are in the landscape or the discourse. So that's what I bring to curation. I also love to connect people. I like to joke and say weaving for me is not a metaphor. I have a background in textile design. I love to weave, people and things together.
so that's going to lead right into this some more points of what I wanted to get to with you. This X-ray vision stuff and the weaving these metaphoric ways of describing how you've operated in business. I think what we're trying to do with Fuse this year is, we talk a lot about dialogue. We talk about specifically having that dialogue with business leadership. And many times I know I've run into business leaders, they are not, they don't have that X-ray vision. What they're very good at is numbers. They're very good at quantification. I mean, brilliant. I've met plenty of brilliant folks, very good at that stuff, very good at making money. And in many ways, sometimes you have this kind of odd dynamic between a highly successful C-suite type and a design type, like myself. I've run into this my whole career. So this is specifically what we're getting at with Fuse this year. Why now, and why is this theme so important?
For so many reasons. I'm going to quote Stephen Gates, who really inspired me he inspired the way I've been thinking about this conference, because in August I heard him say that designers and creatives have a greater opportunity to influence the world now than any time since the Industrial Revolution, and that we're wasting the opportunity. And I agree with him. And I think, that gets to what you just said, which is we're not influencing the conversation in business enough. And so at conferences, you get to see all kinds of people having those conversations. At Fuse this year, we have a lot of business people on the stage. We have Lily Gordon, who sold her company to P&G, First Aid Beauty, and credits Deb Adler's design as a big part of that. We have Todd Waterbury, who's arguably influencing the C-suite every day at Target, and is going to talk about soul at scale. We have Sandy Peterson, who was the chairman of J&J. She just recently stepped down and is doing some other really interesting things. There are conversations that are going on in the world. McKinsey is talking about them, Envision is talking about them, AIGA is talking about them. There are very evolved conversations about creating enterprise experiences that involve design, brand, IT, customer service, certainly the C-suite, but they're only happening some of the places. They're only happening some of the time. So in my own experience, when you go to a conference and you hear leaders and great people talking, it's almost like a contact high. You learn through osmosis.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I've been doing it for years and years myself. First of all, we're going to have Stephen on this podcast in a few weeks. Hopefully, we haven't nailed the date down, but I really want to get and pick his brain about how specifically he thinks we're wasting the opportunity. And on that note, you've talked about this tremendous list of speakers and participants we have this year. Have you heard from? I'm hitting you with a question we didn't discuss ahead of time, but have you heard from any C-suite folks about how design is wasting that opportunity? Or do you find that this is more, folks like Stephen saying this kind of thing?
The McKinsey Design Index, and we're going to have somebody from McKinsey at the conference, and the Envision report that just came out, and AIGA's, I think it's now called the Future of Design. These reports really speak exactly to that, and they show that in very quantifiable terms, financial, human capital, customer appreciation, customer longevity, companies that are more design and brand centric do better. And there's just not enough of that data out in the world. So we're definitely bringing that data to the table. And I'm hoping that a lot of businesses will come to the conference and do, there is, I didn't answer your question earlier about this new unity. If we think about the companies that are now the titans of our lives, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, goes on, those companies, Uber might be another one, they support and surround us with experiences that are very much at the enterprise level. Oh, by the way, there are a lot of other companies that do that too. There are many great hotel companies, great transportation companies, great CPG, fashion companies, film companies that understand how to do that. That is using design and brand, frankly, more brand than design actually, to create value. And we've been talking about this for decades, but we haven't moved the needle far enough. And I think I will interpret Stephen's saying that we're wasting the opportunity by saying that I think he's saying we're not storming the gates. We're not going to the C-suite rationale and, we're not answering the question why design with enough certainty or why brand with enough certainty to get more investment.
I mean, I myself have been at that gate. It's an ominous one. So yeah.
Oops,
so
is it closed?
Yeah. So I'm very interested in hearing what all these folks have to say. I am also, I'd love to, and you and I can talk further on down the road, but I'd love to get that C-suite's perspective, the business leaders who maybe like came to Jesus and we're not advocates for design, but kind of said, oh my gosh, this is really working, in a tangible way. And, I'm now a believer. I wasn't before. Do you know any examples like that?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, I am really paying a lot of attention to Microsoft and Satya Nadella, their CEO right now, because the world is moving rapidly into AI. That's what Watson is all about. And to hear Ginni Rometty or Satya Nadella talk about using AI responsibly, using it with a sense of ethics, or Microsoft's entire investment, which is huge, in inclusive design. They have been a pioneer there. They've been investing in it for years to try to make technology and life experiences more accessible to people who have various disabilities or maybe just can't pick up a computer as easily as another person. So there are two people. I just saw the CEO of Hilton, Chris Nasada, on the television in my Washington Hilton hotel room, looking right into the camera and saying, over the next 10 years, we're going to double. We're going to reduce our carbon footprint by 50%. We're going to double the investment we make in communities. And that's what we mean by travel on purpose. So I think we're seeing a lot of CEOs understanding that they have a responsibility to design the sustainable experience that their customers and their stakeholders have. I could go on, but there are really a lot of them. And frankly, everyone is coming to this conference, whether it's a smaller company or that you might not have heard of, or a company like Method that you know well. The people who are going to be standing on the stage, whether they're brand, design, or business people, wouldn't be standing there if there wasn't a CEO, who would invent.
So, I'm listening to you talk, and I think a lot of people who maybe aren't familiar with design as a discipline, for us who it's part of our career, we understand, I love the old IDEO quote, if it doesn't occur in nature, it was designed. No matter, from the pencil you use to the pad of paper to the Post-its, all of this stuff was designed if it doesn't grow out of the ground or fall from outer space. So, that it speaks to the level of complexity that the design discipline can get to. And this brings me to the Bauhaus. I walk across Park Ave every day, and I see the MetLife building, and the old Pan Am building that was designed by Walter Gropius, the founder of Bauhaus. This year, we're celebrating 100 years of Bauhaus. You can see that influence in every glass skyscraper here in Manhattan, the tremendous amount of influence the Bauhaus school had. So Bauhaus, our tagline this year is design, brand, and the business, a new unity. And this was inspired by the old Bauhaus tag, art and technology, a new unity. Can you just elaborate on this a bit?
Well, the Bauhaus is a meme, and there's a wonderful piece on Ion Design that I would commend everybody that talks about why it's a meme and why people around the world continue to gravitate to it. And I do think it was the vision of Walter Gropius and the rest of the people there. The Bauhaus wanted to bring art and design to the masses through industry. They had architecture maybe as the ultimate construct, but within the building, and that's what Bauhaus means, is the building. There were objects, there was fabric, there were all the things, furniture that would go into the building and create this unified experience. Today, that unified experience is in fact society, the enterprise. I would tell everybody who's listening to this podcast to check out Larry Fink's letter to CEOs on BlackRock. He states very clearly that BlackRock is not going to support or invest in anybody who doesn't help the social fabric. So going back to your IDEO comment, everything can be designed. We need to do a better job of designing our enterprises, our cities, our schools, our government, our institutions to be more inclusive. And design is really doing that in spades right now. Rich Holland is coming. He's the cultural commissioner for the city of Hartford. Ruki Ravi Kumar is going to be talking about design thinking or design education leveling the playing field. There is a new unity. It's only benefiting the people who seize it. And if you look at the valuations of Microsoft and Apple, and we have Ken Kosienda, former Apple designer, coming, those valuations exist because those companies design enterprise experiences. So we've moved way beyond the Bauhaus, but the challenges, are still very great to influence society through better design and better creativity.
I mean, I think in one end, and I'll move on to the next question, but I'll get a little philosophical here. In the Bauhaus, the study, I mean, when I've researched it, looked, and the projects they undertook was very tangible. It was architecture, it was buildings, and this was an industrial revolution. So people were building and constructing and creating factories and industry. And here we are 100 years later, the world is saturated with that stuff. And it seems as though what we're designing now is much more abstract, what you're talking about, like designing enterprise or designing social.
Yeah, but I don't mean it to be abstract, because it's really about designing solutions. Like there's a new co-working space in Manhattan. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it, but it's not WeWork. It's a company that has a couple of physical locations, but then they also rent restaurants that are not open during the day, and they make them co-working spaces for people. So everybody wins. The restaurant wins. New Yorkers get a quiet place to be. This company's leveraging on underutilized assets. The world may be saturated with objects, and I agree, but it's also saturated with problems and opportunities. And
For sure.
design is it's a form of agency that helps anybody think about how to solve those problems, with more impact.
So I know education is very near and dear to your heart. You mentioned it just now. We're working directly with Vernon Lockhart and Osmosis to leave behind something from this conference, something from this elite group of speakers to the Chicago public school system. Can you talk a bit about this effort?
Yes, and I want to say that I met Vernon Lockhart, who is Ultraman. He's amazing, and Project Osmosis has been going strong for 21 years. He's been bringing design education to the south side of Chicago, which is a really troubled area in our country and has been for decades. It's a lot like the work that our friend Maurice Woods is doing in San Francisco with Interact Project. I didn't want to just curate another conference and have 300 creatives in a room talking to each other and then drinking wine and learning. I didn't want to do that. So
it's very bourgeois.
Well, it's great. Like there's so much energy and money and investment that goes into those 3 days. We got to leave something behind. So I talked to you guys, and you were terrifically, thank you, receptive. So what we're going to do is work with Vernon and also the Chicago AIGA chapter, which has been very, very strong in bringing design education, and with Ruki and Rich and others to leave behind resources to show what design careers look like. And those will take the form of these podcasts, videos of the speakers who let us, reuse their videos. We're going to map different career journeys. Rich Collins' career journey, he runs he's the CEO of a design company, and he's the cultural commissioner for the city of Hartford, Connecticut, is very different than Ruki Ravi Kumar, who is head of education for the Cooper Hewitt, but was a professor in Oklahoma, is very different than Josh Higgins, who is now executive creative director at Facebook, but before that was the design director for the last Obama campaign. Careers are myriad, and you and I both know that. Creative careers offer so much strength, possibility, money, impact, agency, a way out of poverty to people who don't know about them. So we're going to make sure that we get as much of the Fuse content into the Chicago public school system, the high schools. We're going to have high school students there. We're going to have teachers there. We're going to do some speed mentoring. And at the beginning, I want to do a lot more of this kind of work with you guys and just in general.
I mean, I've got to say, it's so funny because we have had programs where we work directly with, one of our programs we work with high school students in the past with Fuse. And it was, I remember I was asked last minute, oh, Dan, can you get on the bus and go over to the high school? And I was like, oh, I wanted to go to another session or whatever. So I was a bit disappointed. We went there. It was probably the best experience of the whole conference. And we brought about a dozen, we're talking heads of agencies, no slouches. These guys and gals came over, and this class of high school students had done all these projects. It was very inspirational. It was just fantastic. And I remember, I think the Fuse faculty, the Fuse folks, were more inspired than the kids, but the kids were very inspired as well. So it was a tremendous thing to see and very unexpected. So I'm very excited about this component to what we're doing.
We have a surprise guest who I'm about to make not a surprise. Spencer Dinwiddie, who was a Chicago Bull and NBA player, who's got his own shoe line and an amazing project called Project Dream, which is about helping athletes own their own brands, is going to be coming in via
yes.
Skype and being interviewed by Nancy Green. You know, I really want to make a direct connection between the design profession and high schools. And I would encourage everybody to listen to Jamie Dimon's talk to the New York Economic Club 3 weeks ago, in which he said in the first 5 minutes that we put a man on the moon in 8 years, but it took us 12 years to fix the Bayonne Bridge. The recovery from 2008 has been, in his words, anemic. We can all feel that. It should have been 40%, it was 20%. And then lastly, the zinger was, and we are failing in our high schools. 70% of the kids who graduate are not eligible for the military, they're obese, they can't read or write. It's not just that if we don't break the cycle in our cities of creating more job opportunities and career paths and options for high school students, to quote Jamie Dimon, we will be ensuring generations of poverty, to come. I'm not willing to sit by. I'm just not, I'm at a point in my life where that's to me what Stephen Gates means when he says, don't waste the opportunity. We have an opportunity to put tremendous focus on high school students and help them see a much broader world that includes UX design and being an awesome, auto mechanic who makes $100,000 a year, whatever, doing service design. I want to focus there instead of a lot of the people who are coming to the conference. And it's going to be good for the conference, good for Chicago's public school system. It'll be good for business and good for society if we make these connections, these relationships stronger. And you can see I have a lot of fire in my belly about it, Dan. I'm from Chicago. I love Chicago. I love kids. And I don't want to see this next generation stymied. I want them to see the opportunity. So everyone should come to Fuse, not just design and creative people, but business people. Everyone should come.
Well, Julie, I am right there with you. So you say jump, I'll say how high. And
you're a great partner. Really
I'm so gung-ho for this. I'm very excited. And you've been such a tremendous inspiration. So I'm all geared up for it. And one of the things I want to ensure is that Fuse is no longer just a 3-day event in time. That we start to forge ahead and create these relationships beyond that time span. And yeah, absolutely, with the future generation as well. In fact, probably most importantly.
Well, you're a dad, and I've got a lot of kids in my life. It's they're ready to embrace all of this. We just have to share more with them, close by saying I've worked with Informa before Informa was IIR for over a decade. I used to come to Fuse when Debbie Millman and then Cheryl Swanson were leading it. It was always a tremendously important experience for me, and I've enjoyed working with you and Kelly and the whole team. And I really hope people come and experience it because it's going to be phenomenal and life-changing. Just that's all.
All right. Julie, thanks so much for spending the time, and we'll be talking again, you and I, very soon, and we'll definitely be kicking it this year at Fuse. So thanks a lot, Julie.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dan. Have a great weekend.
You too.